The games are coming thick and fast at this time of the year, so I'm here to help you set up your teams ahead of Game Week 15. So first up today, a really popular transfer in this week and in the last couple of weeks as well has been Bukayo Saka. Now, the data and the returns haven't really been matching recently. He's been overperforming on the amount of XG and XA that he's actually acquiring game to game. So there are a few FPL managers out there that are a little bit doubtful as to whether or not this will continue for him. However, in game week 14, he did actually register some really good numbers. He got an XGI of over 1 in that game and obviously got the goal as well. So it's good to see him returning as an owner, but also if you're not yet on him, I think up until game week 14, I would have completely understood why you were probably tempted to just wait it out and see what he does for the next few game weeks. However, Arsenal are now a team that look like they're starting to really click in front of goal. They obviously battered Lens in the Champions League as well in midweek and look like a team that are a bit more free-flowing all of a sudden. Some of the moves and the link-up play in the game over the weekend was absolutely fantastic. And it's like the Arsenal we saw last season, which maybe we've been missing out on a little bit so far this year. Maybe they've been playing a little bit more conservatively. However, it looks like the handbrake was taken off over the past week or so. And Saka is probably as likely as anyone to benefit from that. If you do look at the XG and the XA per 90 on the right-hand side of this slide, 0.36 in both is actually really good. That combines to almost 3/4 of 1 XGI per 90 every single game. That was a really terrible explanation, but you get what I mean. So we're looking at 3 returns in every 4 games on average. Over the next 3 weeks as well, they've got some great fixtures. Luton away from home, Aston Villa, and then Brighton. Yes, they're both good teams, but they do concede a lot of goals. So I'd be more than happy to own him for those game weeks. And then when you think about it as well, we're entering a really busy and congested part of the season, and you want to be able to rely on as many players as possible in your starting 11 to be getting 80 plus minutes week in, week out with a lack of a fear of rotation. And Saka gets absolutely farmed out by Arteta. He rarely misses a game. He rarely misses a minute. So as long as he's fit, he'll probably be starting every single one of those games and getting significantly more minutes than maybe some of his other teammates. I'm looking at the likes of Jesus or Martinelli, for instance. So overall for me, I think he is a really good buy this week. Yes, he's expensive, but I still think that if you can get to him, I think he is a priority this week, and I can understand why so many managers are flocking to him right now. Another player who's going to be strangely popular as a buy this week is Martin Dubravka. Now, this isn't a player I thought I'd be recommending this game week, but situations change very quickly in FPL, and Nick Pope looks like he's dislocated his shoulder pretty late on in that Man United clash. Now, what that means is up for debate. We don't know exactly how long he's going to be out at this point. We don't even know for sure that he has dislocated his shoulder, but it seems like he could have a fairly significant injury. And Howe, even after the match, who is usually really coy on these kind of things, said that it could be a bit of a long-term one. So Nick Pope looks like he might be out for a while. That means Martin Dubravka will come in as the backup keeper of choice for Newcastle. Came on very late on in the Man United game, as I mentioned. So 1.1% ownership, but most importantly, 3.9 million is a very, very cheap starting keeper to have in our lineups. And in a Newcastle defence, which is very, very tight, even with those injuries, they're keeping a lot of clean sheets at the moment. He could be a really good pickup for any managers who are frustrated with the likes of Areola, or to be honest, pretty much any keeper at the moment, because not many of them are keeping clean sheets. The stats on the right-hand side are obviously not to do with Martin Dubravka in most instances because he's only played about 10 minutes this season. The XGC per 90 and the clean sheets are based on Newcastle generally. And if we back them to continue with these sort of numbers, then he will be a really good purchase, especially with the next 5 game weeks in mind, which I think is a reasonable time frame to assume that he will be starting matches for, considering the length of Nick Pope's potential absence. So you'd think he's safe for those 5. They're really good fixtures. Other than that Tottenham away game in game week 16, those are very decent opportunities for clean sheets for him. And they've only conceded 14 this season overall, which it's a very very rigid, very sturdy defence. Will Nick Pope being out make them significantly worse defensively? Potentially. It could have an impact. And as we saw with Liverpool over the weekend, Alisson down to Kelleher did make a difference. So I do want to consider that. I do want to take that into account. But the numbers are still really good, and they look like a team that rely upon the unit rather than just individuals. So they've had injuries already. 2 or 3 players, Botman has been out, Livramento's had to come in, or quite a few players have been out of that Newcastle starting 11, and they've still looked really strong defensively. So is it crazy to assume that Dubravka being in would make them significantly worse as a defence? I don't think it's crazy, but I think there is enough going for this pick, especially because he's this cheap, and the fact that no other keepers are keeping clean sheets anyway, that you might as well save the money and you might as well go for him. Now, you could wait for a little bit just to see and get confirmation on how long Nick Pope looks like he's going to be out for, and that might be what I do personally. But any of you who back him early and go for that Everton away game, one, that's a really good opportunity for a clean sheet, especially if you own Areola, who go up against Tottenham. That's a much better opportunity, and he looks fairly certain to start in game week 15. And 2, you'll get him at 3.9 million, and I imagine the transfers in are going to be really busy this week for Dubravka, so he'll probably get a price rise pretty quickly. He'll still be cheap, but if you want him at his bottom price of 3.9 million, acting now would be helpful. Overall, I might wait, but if I'm going to make a transfer this week, he'll be high in mind, and I am pretty frustrated with my keepers at the moment, so he could easily be coming in for me. It's been a really busy week when we consider Aston Villa assets, and mostly it's been players on the chopping block recently. And Matty Cash, I recommended it last week, and I'm going to recommend it this week as well. He looks like a player that we can probably look at selling right now. Down to 5 million. He is dropping in ownership at the moment as well. He's under 30% and it is dropping week on week. And the data is also significantly dropping week on week as well at the moment. Obviously, he was benched against Bournemouth, came on with about 20 minutes to spare. So for me, he blocked Taylor on the bench for 10 points. So I am a bit annoyed, but I think it's understandable. I didn't really expect him to miss out the full 90 minutes, and it was taking a risk on him starting that game. There were rumours that he was going to be benched after all. However, now that we've got that information and we know that he is a bit of a rotation risk, and the fixtures over the next 5 aren't looking great, especially with clean sheets in mind, Matty Cash could definitely be a player that we're looking at selling this week. Now, Man City and Arsenal, not easy games by any stretch of the imagination. And then Brentford away from home, you'd probably expect them to score. Like I mentioned, Aston Villa aren't really keeping clean sheets at the moment anyway. So this is a player that, if he's not getting the attacking returns, he's probably not going to be worth the money for us. I think the question is, who would you be buying instead of him? And will they cover game week 18 in the same way that Matty Cash will? That Sheffield United at home game in game week 18 is going to be really important. And because we've got a couple of teams blanking that week, Brentford and Man City in mind, having players who've got great home fixtures against Sheffield United would be really helpful rather than relying on a really deep bench. So there is a consideration for that, but I think overall the negatives outweigh the positives, and if I can, I'd be looking at selling him. He is a player that I could just bench this week for now and maybe consider which defenders I'm going to pick up later on, but he's definitely on the chopping block very, very soon, and I'm going to be recommending later on in this video which defenders I'd be eyeing up to get in instead of him. So we've spoken about Matty Cash, and that's one Aston Villa asset out of the way. The other one I wanted to mention on the chopping block is Moussa Diaby. Yes, he returned and got the assist in game week 14. However, he was benched, and I think it's fair to assume, considering Bailey's form, the fact Watkins is in sensational form as well, and the amount of other rotational assets at Aston Villa, he could miss more minutes over the next stretch of fixtures, especially when we consider how busy and packed that schedule is for Villa. So he's 6.8 million, 14% owned. That will continue to drop, I'd imagine. The data is now under 0.5 XGI per 90, which again, it's not bad, it's not terrible by any stretch, and the XG per 90 is still decent, but there are other assets around his price point that are outperforming him, and considering the fact that we can't guarantee the minutes and the fixtures aren't looking too great, I think it's fair to assume that you could pretty safely move away from him this week and move towards some other mid-price midfielders. I won't be recommending any specifically in this video, but in previous videos I've recommended the likes of Brian Mbeumo, so you could be looking at someone like him. Jared Bowen is always going to be a decent option, of course, and then if you want to downgrade the position, you could be looking at the likes of Cole Palmer, Anthony Gordon. These are all assets that at the moment are outperforming Moussa Diaby. Yes, he's got 10 returns this season. He's got 70 points. That's a great return. But I think over this specific stretch of fixtures, the games aren't great. And also he looks like a player that could get reduced minutes. So I'd probably reluctantly be looking at selling him this game week. The third and final Aston Villa asset I want to briefly talk about today is Ollie Watkins, and annoyingly I took the potential injury doubt as in game week 14 as gospel, and I sold him for Darwin, and I do really regret that move, but based on the information we had at the time, I did feel like I had to make a decision. Looking back, I wish that I just played Archer, or just not played Archer, but sort of had him first on the bench and was okay with the idea that Ollie Watkins could have missed the Bournemouth game, but he always looked likely to come back in against Man City, even if he did miss that match. And obviously, I would still have had the potential upside of him starting against Bournemouth. I always had him down as a really good option for that game week. Obviously, it's Bournemouth, but that injury doubt just kind of scared me off of him a little bit, and I did make the move with my second free transfer, so not for a hit, which is probably the only silver lining there, but brought in Darwin, and now Darwin looks like maybe not the best asset to be holding over the next stretch of games. So Ollie Watkins, for me, I think it would be negligent of me not to talk about him today. I think if you've still got him, he's a definite hold. He keeps getting that data, the underlying data of 0.58 XG per 90 is still fantastic. 8 goals, 9 assists is an overperformance. I'm not going to pretend that he's not overperforming at the moment, but he is in sensational form and is undoubtedly a very important player to have in our starting 11. If you've still got him, I would 100% be holding on to him despite the fixtures. Yes, in the case of Matty Cash and Diaby, I'd be looking at selling. But Ollie Watkins seems to be a player that, regardless of the fixtures, I still expect him to tick along nicely. And that Sheffield United game in game week 18 is a fixture that I really want to be able to own Ollie Watkins for. And I want to be able to get back to him by that point. So frustratingly for me, I'm without him right now, but I do need to have a plan to get back to him by game week 18. And I wouldn't recommend selling him at this point, considering everything we know now. So for me, he's a definite hold. Let me know what you're thinking about him, whether you sold him in game week 14, and if you've got a plan to get back to him, reverse that transfer perhaps from Darwin, or whether you're just going to see it out and hope that Darwin does make up the points in the next few game weeks. So I mentioned earlier on I'd be talking about some defenders that I'd be looking at bringing in for the likes of Matty Cash this game week. And Pedro Porro is probably top of that list at the moment. Yes, 0 points in game week 14, but I think we can forgive him considering it was against Man City and they've had a few defensive casualties over the last few game weeks, which meant that they were weaker defensively. Despite that, Pedro Porro has still been looking to get forward into advanced areas. The underlying data is still looking really positive for him at over 0.25 XGI per 90. That's very, very decent for a defender. And 4 assists so far this season is nothing to be sniffed at either. The fixtures over the next 5 look pretty decent for not only attacking returns, but also defensively could be keeping a couple of clean sheets there as well. West Ham at home, yes, they do look likely to score in most games, but I would still expect Porro to get forward. Hopefully getting an attacking return in that game would be very, very handy for any new owners. And then, yes, Newcastle's going to be a tough game, but at home, who knows? And then it's Nottingham Forest and Everton, crucially, in that game week 18. If you're selling Matty Cash against Sheffield United at home, it's nice to know that Porro has a really nice fixture in game week 18 to balance it out a little bit. And considering he's getting 90 minutes in every single game at the moment, the attacking upside is still there. And Tottenham look like a team that are relentlessly going to stick to their principles. He's going to keep getting forward. He's going to keep attacking. And I feel like a big haul is not too far away for him. If they can keep a clean sheet and he can get an attacking return in one game, the haul could be monumental, and he's a player that I'm very interested in bringing in whilst he's still fairly low owned, whilst the data is still good. I want to get on him quickly before the masses clock onto it, and he's a player that I'd definitely be looking at over the next couple of game weeks. So I've left this one for last with good reason, because I didn't want any of the new viewers to think that I was absolutely crazy. But Reece James is a player I do actually have my eye on over the next few game weeks. Yes, he is a significant injury risk whenever he does play, and that suspension a couple of weeks ago was very frustrating for anyone who jumped on him early. But if we look at purely the fixtures over the next 5 game weeks, Chelsea's run after Man United away, and possibly even including Man United away, is very, very good. So Everton, Sheffield United, Wolves and Crystal Palace is not only great from a defensive point of view, but again, for attacking returns, that could be really, really handy. Yes, he's only got 1 assist so far this season and only 7 points overall. He's not been a player that any of us have really looked at. Obviously, under 5% ownership. He's not really been considered by anyone, possibly because of his recurring injury doubts. But he has stated that he's come back fitter and fresher than ever before. They have taken a little bit more time over bringing him back into the starting 11. And weirdly, that red card and suspension a couple of weeks ago might have meant that he's been able to rest up and get even more back to match fitness and back to full fitness over those couple of weeks without getting another injury. It is a massive risk. He's probably not a player that I bring in specifically this game week, but he is high in mind over the next few. And if he can survive the Man United game without any sort of injury doubt, then maybe from game week 16 onwards, he's a player that we could be considering. Word of warning, it's happened before where he looks fit, fresh, firing, and then all of a sudden he gets yet another injury setback. So he is a big risk, and if I go for him, it would be, in the back of my mind, a big injury doubt whenever he plays. So maybe it's one to be a bit more conservative with. But I think if you want to chase the upside, he's got better upside than nearly any other defender in the game. And if you can pick a stretch of fixtures where he does start consistently, I would expect him to get those attacking returns, and Chelsea defensively have looked generally pretty solid this season as well. So the upside is there. It is a risk. It is a punt, but I'd be interested to know whether or not any of you are considering Reece James over the next stretch of fixtures. So do let me know in the comments below. So there you have it. Those are my transfer tips ahead of game week 15. It's a really quick turnaround, so I'm going to be posting my team selection video tomorrow morning, so do stay tuned for that. If you could leave a like and, more importantly, subscribe to the channel, that would be really appreciated. It also means that you won't miss out on any of my future content as well. However, in the meantime, I wish you all the best of luck ahead of game week 15, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow for my team selection video.